Let's say you committed a crime, you've done your time, all of it's in your past, but you still have a record. Does that mean you shouldn't be a landlord ever?
What's going on, guys? We're back in the embassy bringing you another podcast. We're going to be discussing anything and everything to do with the rental licensing bylaw in Windsor, Ontario. I'm here myself, Harjeet Do, Armani Anand, and Aftab Dylan.
What's up, guys? This is going to be a very important episode for each and every single investor that has bought into the city of Windsor, or if you were thinking of buying in the city of Windsor, this is something that you might want to watch just because it might impact you as an investor buying into the city. So if you're buying a duplex, triplex, fourplex, or a single family home, and you're thinking about renting it out, this is a must-watch video because there's a bunch of changes in the bylaws that will impact all the investors in the city of Windsor for years to come, and that's impacting investors today. So we're going to give you all the information, the behind the scenes, exactly what's going on with this bylaw program.
Yeah, I feel like nowadays this is up in the air. Like anyone and everyone you talk to is talking about the new rental licensing program. Anyone from Toronto, out of town investors, that's all they're talking about. So we're going to give you the full scoop on what we think as investors in the city, what's going on, and all that is being discussed in various group chats or on the news.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty much highlighting everything about what the program is, where we stand currently with the program, what the city's trying to implement for all the investors, and what this means for us as investors at the end of the day. Is this going to cost us more money? Is this going to be cheaper? How much of an impact is this going to have on the residential housing market? Where will the market head after this gets impacted? And whether, if it's even going to be, this is just a pilot program right now, and whether this is just going to be implemented for the better half of the years to come, and if it's going to be spreading into different wards. So
Just like when the interest rates went up and there was a lot of misinformation in the market and everyone was scared and no one knew what was really going on, it's kind of like this pilot program here in Windsor where all the Windsor investors or anyone looking at Windsor, they're confused. They're like, what's going on? I don't know. Everyone's talking about these Ward 1, Ward 2 and all. If you're not from here, you get confused. So we're going to cover everything for you today.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start off by what is the residential rental licensing?
So residential licensing bylaw that was just recently passed, it's something that impacts every unit owner that has less than 4 units. So if you have a fourplex, which is 4 units, triplex, 3 units, duplex, 2 units, or even a single family home that you're renting out, now you are required by law in Ward 1 and Ward 2 to go and purchase a rental licensing application that you have to file with the city to be able to rent those units out.
Yeah, so the first thing that we have to discuss is where this is taking place. So there's a bunch of wards in Windsor, so it's broken up into sections. This rental licensing right now covers Ward 1 and Ward 2, which is primarily the student rental areas.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why I think they targeted those areas specifically is because that's where they see mass amount of foreign investors that are not native to Windsor. They're buying from Toronto, Vancouver. When I say foreign, I don't mean from other countries. I also mean people that are not from the city itself. So it is something that they're trying to see to manage and better take care of the property, just so they know who's renting, to who they're renting to, who owns these units, and just to have more control, governing control as to what's happening in those 2 wards. Now, if you own properties in these 2 wards, it's really important to know that there is a cost associated with you obtaining this license. And once you obtain this license, if you are approved from the city, first you have to file an application. If you do get approved, you have to pay how much?
$466 per unit for the first year.
Okay, so if you have 4 units, you're paying that for each and every single unit you own in that one dwelling. So if you have multiple dwellings in one property, you're going to pay that times 4 or that times 3, depending on how many units you have, if it's less than 4 or 4 units. Then you also have to pay a renewal fee every single year going forward if you are applying to this pilot program. How much is the renewal fee?
It's $275 a year.
That's per unit, or is that per the?
No, that's your renewal fee each year on top of your $466 per unit.
Right. So the good thing about this is this. Okay, I see what the city's trying to do with making sure there's some implications, and they were trying to implement a better program to make housing more safer. for students and for international students, because there was a tragedy that happened in the city of Windsor where a tenant passed away due to the non-proper use of the property from the landlord, because he wasn't taking care of the property, and it affects not only students that don't have much of a voice, right? And so they're trying to implement that just to make sure that everyone's safe. So I do get that, but to target specifically 2 wards that are going to be for out of city investors, like for Toronto investors and stuff, that are bringing all this funding and bringing all this money and boosting the economy of Windsor, that to me didn't really sit right with the pilot program that they have.
Right. You brought up 2 key points right here. Number one, they're targeting an area, especially an area that all the foreign investors are bringing the money into the city. Number 2 is the safety aspect. So safety of these properties, this is a concern that a lot of the landlords have right now, is they already have systems and processes in place that are supposed to tackle these safety issues anyways. So with this licensing, it's just an addition where you're paying the fees and they're still using the same system and process to check your property. So a lot of people are arguing that if all the procedures are in place, all the rules and regulations are in place, you should just enforce those rather than making us pay for a fee to have you enforce those.
Exactly, for additional units, and especially with the makeup of Windsor, for people that are not familiar with the city, and if you're someone that's looking at the city of Windsor as a future investment place for you, it's very lucrative to buy properties here. And that's the reason why a lot of people from out of town come to the city to buy properties, just because they're making cash flow on their returns when they're buying these units. So, you're only 3 hours away from Toronto. You can pick up a triplex for roughly around $650,000, and you're getting significant rental income from those 3 units. If you're buying a 4-plex, you have 4 units, you can pick it up for less than $1 million. And by owning 4 units, now you have guaranteed income, because there's a lot of housing shortage in the city of Windsor. So there's an influx of students, influx of engineers, and a lot of professionals that are coming into the city, building the hospital, building the bridge. And, with all the growth that the city's poised for, this is taking a few steps back, just because this is going to hinder and stop some of the foreign investors that are coming from other cities to come into our city and invest into the city of Windsor. And this right now, luckily, good news, which we're going to go into later, there's a lot of things happening with this, just because there was a full petition that started against this program, this pilot program, which we're going to cover later on to this video. But we're going to talk about the application right now. So let's talk about what this pilot program covers, what you have to do to get licensed for those units if you are an investor into the city of Windsor in Ward 1 and 2. So, Tabs, cover the first one.
Okay, so the city, the way they have it set up, the first step that you have to do is go through a check if you're qualifying, right? So what they do is they give you a checklist to do, basically see if your property is safe. You go through, and if there's some minor things that you can change, you change that. But the biggest thing that comes into play is getting an ESA assessment done.
So what is an ESA? So if I'm applying for this and I have no clue about, first of all, I'm a first-time investor, what is an ESA inspection? And what does that mean for me?
That's very key, because a lot of these investors are first-time investors.
I was ordering back.
Ben? Okay, so let's start again.
Yeah.
So talk about, but what do you have to get? That's the first part of the process is what?
Mm-hmm.
So cut this in from here and now.
So right at the start of this property, let me just get back into it.
Start from here and now.
The very first step that the city provides you with is a checklist. This checklist is very basic and just sort of outlines some of the safety features that your house should already be equipped with. Fire alarms, do you have those? Is there any loose wiring? Blah, 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 which is stuff that most people address anyways. You go through that checklist, but where it gets into more detail is an ESA assessment.
So for people that do not know what ESA assessment is, it's an electrical system safety assessment. So you have to get that done from an inspector that's going to come there and do an electrical safety system assessment at your property. And that's going to cost you an additional charge for that. So that could vary depending on how many units you have. So that you also have to obtain separately. Then you have to get that inspector to give you that report. And if you pass that inspection, then you go back to the city and then you apply for the next step.
And one of the main things within this whole application that people are fighting about is when you're gathering all your documents, because there's a lot of basic requirements such as being 18 years old, having the ESA assessment done, having insurance on the property. But one key factor that a lot of people say is unfair is that you have to get a criminal record check and showcase that you're a fit landlord. Now, let me ask you, Harjeet, let's say you committed a crime, you've done your time, all of it's in your past, but you still have a record. Does that mean you shouldn't be a landlord ever?
You gotta look at it this way, right? If something happened in the past and, you served your time and you come out as a better person, it's kind of showing that, hey, listen, you're basically judging a person off their past and preventing them from moving forward. I believe that everyone deserves a second chance in life to grow and get over their past. So it's kind of a very sticky situation here. So I don't agree with that. If you've already done the time to be in the past, why are you prevented from doing good and, bettering your life and becoming a landlord and investing in real estate?
Mm. And another thing that, I have to cover on this is this, like you as an investor, whether you have a record or not, you're still providing value to the economy today.
That's right.
You are taking all the risk. You're putting money that you have to save up. It's not easy to be a landlord in today's society. You still have to save up a significant amount of down payment, number one. Then you have to be pre-approved to purchase a property, which is not an easy step because interest rates are through the roof. So for you to be pre-qualified to buy a property, that's another challenge of its own. So if once you pass those two challenges, right, then you go to a third challenge. Challenges of owning a property, then you have to rent it out, take all the risk of the current market situations. You're providing a lot of value to the economy, to supporting the system of that city, right? So you're taking all these investors out. And these are just, even if you don't have a police record check, the fact that you even have to do this as a prerequisite, I'm not sure if this is something that, they shouldn't have to look into your past if you're providing housing to somebody else, because we already have a shortage of housing as it is to begin with.
Yeah.
And if we're taking all these investors out of Toronto that are coming here, that are buying properties, then the city is not going to grow at the pace that it's poised for, right?
Yeah, and then especially in wards 1 and 2, where it's close to the University of Windsor, you're actually you're preventing housing there as well. Like if someone's coming and they're brand new to the city and they're renting, you're actually, making it more difficult for them too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You made an excellent point about the shortage. So if we already know there's a shortage in housing and it's already difficult for all these tenants, especially in the university area and all these international students to come here and find placements in safe houses, what happens is, like Armani said, if all these investors stop coming here, and you're an investor in the city already, and now you're taking on the burden of all this extra cost, how are you going to offset that cost?
Exactly.
You're going to put it on the tenants. Your rent goes up. But with these students, where wards 1 and 2 are placed, those students can't afford these higher rents. So not only are the landlords suffering, the tenants on the other end are also suffering.
That's right. And then they're forced to, find housing in different areas, and their cost of living goes up as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a win-win situation for the landlords or the tenants.
Exactly. And if there's already a shortage of housing, people, if they're not applying to this board, they're going to take those houses and they're going to say, you guys cannot rent this off. And those houses come off the market in terms of being rental properties. So now you're creating more demand for those lack of homes that are already there. Now, whatever houses that you can rent, now they have over demand and rental prices go up. So in hindsight, it really damages the entire social structure of renting, being a landlord, and tenants are the ones that are going to end up paying for this, because all those costs, you think the landlords are going to take those costs? No, those landlords are going to apply those costs onto their tenants by raising the rents.
Sure.
So, all the renovations and stuff that they have to make, or any certificates that they have to get, all those costs are going to be thrown on to the person at the end.
Yeah.
Who eventually pays for this? Tenants.
Yeah. And even when you're purchasing a property in Windsor, these are older style homes, right? These are grandfather homes. The actual basement heights and stuff. There's a lot of things that you cannot just go in and fix.
Yeah.
They bought as is.
Yeah. Exactly.
Another thing that you brought up slightly was the people who have applied. So currently, originally the date was set that you had until May 31st to apply and obtain your licensing without being hit with any late fees and whatnot. But out of the 4,000 estimated units within Ward 1 and Ward 2, only 500 landlords have applied. Only 500 units. So what does that tell you?
There's resistance, right? And the resistance is because this is a pilot program at the end of the day still. So another thing that I want to bring up is, those people that have not applied, they've started a group of their own. And this group is fighting towards filing an injunction towards the city. And the Windsor Housing Providers, Inc., this is a company that we're looking at here. They have raised over $80,000 for the city lawyers to fight this case. So right now there's a big lawsuit that's happening between the city and the landlords that have, made a WhatsApp group together, accumulated all these different landlords from different places. And they have made a group to fight against this cause because they don't think that it's just. And they actually had a court date yesterday, which was Monday. So they had a court date yesterday, and we're going to cover exactly what happened there. So there was a petition that happened at the city hall. And from that petition, this is what's happening right now. This is the result of the petition that happened. So Fabio Costante, Ward 2 councillor, put the motion forward to approve the recommendation. He put that forward. He says that the bylaw is not new, and the council has been working towards this for 4 terms now. So this has been something that's been, discussed very often. No property owner is required to obtain a license until at least a decision of the injunction hearing results at the date of November 27th, which is a court date. So now what they've done is, before it was mandatory in Ward 1 and Ward 2 for you to apply for this license, for you to have a rental property. Now you don't have to do that until November 27th, and that's the new date because of this court case that just happened yesterday. So this is a small victory in the courts for all landlords. That is actually a big victory so far, because this is one step in the right direction to recheck the systems, right? Because the city cannot just impose these laws without having some friction and without having some people come back and say, look, we're the ones that are putting all this money into the city of Windsor. We need to have a rediscussion about this to make, some positive changes to allow more investors to come into the city.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of resistance. And every time I open up my phone and I go on WhatsApp, that's the first group chat that's blowing up. So people are not happy. They don't agree with this. And, we stand by them, right? It's a small victory in the courts, and it's going to have a greater outcome, I hope so.
The main thing that I see with this November 27th court date now is it provides us more time. Originally, when all of this went down in February, you had 4 months to figure everything out. But especially if you're an out-of-town investor, 4 months is not as much time as you think to figure out how to get the license, how to get all these documents and fixes in place, to have it all done and figured out, especially if it's the cost is a burden, especially with interest rates right now. A lot of people are paying costs already to the banks on their mortgages because interest rates have gone up. Now, if they add a burden of, hey, listen, now you got to get licensing. Oh, turns out you own 6 duplexes. Now you got to apply for all those licenses. Yeah. It's a huge factor that can change what you do with your entire portfolio.
Exactly. And that kind of, makes me rethink about buying in Windsor myself, just because I'm thinking, if I'm buying in Ward 1 and Ward 2, like, I'm obviously going to, as an investor, keep purchasing properties in the city because it still makes so much sense to buying in Toronto and other places. But if I'm buying stuff here, these kind of laws is what creates a total mind shift change for investors to go to different cities. And then I'll start looking at cities like Ohio and across the border. And then I'm taking money to America, where I could be investing into my own economy, where I actually live. Because I live in Windsor, I'm providing housing. And that's the way I look at it, right? So you have to think about this. Like, I'm taking my money elsewhere. I'm not taking my money to the same city that's putting all these laws forth for making it difficult for me to be an investor. Because as an investor, I have to have a significant return on my property, right? If I'm not making a return, I'm not doing a charity service here, right? I'm taking all the risk. I have to buy a property. I have to do all the renovations. And the tenant laws here are not friendly to begin with. So there's a lot of things that, we already have to counteract every single time when we think about buying a property here. We still do it anyways, because we know that investments are the only way to get ahead, especially in Canada, because we don't have some of the things that America has to their disposal for, taxation rules, different things that Ohio offers, like landlord-friendly cities. Ontario is not that.
Yeah.
But in Ontario, if you were to invest, this is the best city by far still. And the reason why is because of this, because a lot of landlords got together and they actually said, you know what, we're going to change this, because this does not sound right to us. Because the city just went ahead and did this with Ward 1 and Ward 2, they were going to take this off into different wards after. They were going to go into all the other wards. And then this becomes a bylaw that's passed in the entire city of Windsor.
Yeah.
And that would have a major crushing impact in the city.
And the funniest thing about this pilot, that when it first happened, with this pilot, it was a voluntary program. You can voluntarily choose to enroll and get the licensing. But if you didn't get the licensing voluntarily, you were going to be hit with all the fees and whatnot, and they would enforce the bylaw by coming and doing checks and tacking on all those costs as well. So is it really voluntary at the beginning?
Mm-hmm.
Not really.
No, it's forced.
It's forced. It's forced. Exactly. So they make it sound nice. We have a voluntary pilot program, but if you don't do it, this is the repercussions. So like Armani said, it was forced. And a lot of people, especially if you're hurting, you can't be forced to spend money that you don't have. And like you said, these landlords are taking on all the risk and already spending and jumping through all these hurdles to provide housing. So the city is the city is creating another huge hurdle for these landlords, which if it deters people from providing more housing for these students, what happens? More unsafe housing actually comes out of it.
No, I agree. Like Windsor's a really popular area to invest in because the entry level is so cheap. Second of all, you're getting principal pay down, appreciation, and cash flow. If you're already applying this new pilot licensing program on them, restricting their cash flow and all the other incentives to invest here, it's doesn't make sense. Why would you want to come here and take that on?
Mm.
So you're pushing investors, away from this in city for investing. Right?
Yeah. But another thing I like about the city of Windsor is the fact that we're able to make a stoppage to this madness, right? So all the people came together, they made a change, they made an impact. They had a protest yesterday. A lot of people showed up. A lot of landlords were there, actually at the city council, and they were voicing their opinion, as we all are entitled to as citizens. And they did that. They stopped this program from proceeding forward, which can save a lot of future landlords to be a lot of headache. So this is why I love the city of Windsor, because they are willing to listen to you as well. They're not just ones to say, you know what, this is something that we're going to do and we're not going to listen to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I like investing into the city, because there is stoppages, right? If there's something that's we're deviating off of that doesn't really align with the practices for the city of where the future is forecasted to be for the city, there is change, and change is always good. I understand that everyone in the city just wants everybody to be safe. And as landlords, we all have a fiduciary duty to make sure that we're providing safe, nice housing for people that are living in your properties, because that's their homes. And you as a landlord have to understand that. So unfortunately, because of some bad landlords, every other landlords, they get penalized. And it's not really fair to everybody. Just because of some person's actions, everybody else has to pay for the repercussions.
Yeah.
And that's such an excellent point of where Windsor's listening, because if you're in a bigger city like Toronto, if a bylaw or something, a pilot program like this goes through, even if there's 100,000 people who don't agree with it, there's just so many people there that don't care, and the city doesn't even bother listening to you. Whereas Windsor, the smaller city, investor-focused city, when investors are pissed, when the people that live in that city are pissed, the city pays attention because they have no option not to.
Exactly. That's the charm of smaller cities in the first place, right? And I like that. So I will still continue to keep on investing in the city of Windsor. This rental licensing program has been stopped now till November 27th, as you've seen here. So you're not required to do anything with those properties or required to get your license as of now. This is going to go into the second step of proceedings. And once that goes into there, then we're going to really find out what actually ends up happening, because this is going to go to the Supreme Court. This is a major, major discussion right now in the city of Windsor as an investor. So a small victory for landlords and a major victory for all investors into the city of Windsor. I don't see how this is going to be impactful. City has done the right job of making all of the investors aware of the things that need to change, because they could force their hand, which is good because it brings this issue into the limelight. So I do appreciate that. But at the same time, I love that everyone's coming together as a community right now and fighting this cause. So once this happens, we'll see what happens with this. But as of now, that's your update for this rental licensing program. Thank you guys all for tuning in and watching this video. If you guys are looking to invest into the city of Windsor, we have a team of specialists right here. All three of us literally work here, live here, We spend all our days here in the city of Windsor. We came from a big city, came to a smaller city for a better future. And you can too. You don't have to move here, but you can definitely invest here. And investing here has been very lucrative for thousands of families that we've helped, and it could definitely help you as well. So from everybody here on this table and on this panel, we love to bring you guys these videos. So if you could just give us the thumbs up, like this video, subscribe, and share this with a friend who wants to know about the rental licensing program, or whether he was looking to think about investing into the city of Windsor, this is the page for you to follow. So thank you guys. I appreciate you guys for joining us. And from Aftab and Harjeet,
Take care. Thank you, everyone.
stay invested.